I finally got to see The Brutalist. Is it any good? Let's talk about it. When a visionary architect and his wife flee post-war Europe in 1947 to rebuild their legacy and witness the birth in modern United States, their lives are changed forever by a mysterious, wealthy client. So this is a film that I've been waiting for a long time, ever since the extreme buzz it got from the fall film festivals last year. Then it got picked up from A24, which made me a little bit worried because usually some A24 films, I don't get to see them in my theaters, but thankfully it finally showed up at my local cinema in, oh my goodness, everyone, there's been a joke about this movie, everyone calling it, a monumental piece of a film. And, we can joke about that for as long as we want, but if I was gonna describe the film in one word, it would also be monumental, as this is just a truly grand film that we haven't seen in a long time. We haven't seen a film like this in over 10 plus years or something like that. The closest comparison you can probably make on the last few years is going to be Oppenheimer and Killers of the Flower Moon, but that's basically the only thing that connects them, is that they're all like 3 hour plus movies that essentially stand out compared to the rinse and repeat blockbusters that we get each of the year. So this is very different from those, but if you were to compare those, the run times really do stand out, as this is a very, very long movie, but I was enthralled the whole time, and that's thanks to our director Brady Corbet, who is a filmmaker that I wasn't too familiar with before going into this. I'm gonna have to keep an eye on him. I know he has the Vox Lux, I think, with Natalie Portman. I've heard a little bit of stuff about that one. I think he has like a couple other films. That's really the only thing I've heard about him on this one. But he directed this to a fine point, and he aimed for perfection. I think he found it. And while he was also trying to shock the audience, give everyone a huge conversational piece, and he succeeded in all those categories. Like, a lot of people outside my theater were talking about this. I was talking about this movie with my friend, and I'm talking to my friend about this movie, and I'm like, I'm gonna have to get back to you about this, because this is such a huge piece of work that leaves you thinking, asking a lot of questions to yourself about, the American dream, what it can do to someone, how evil some people can be, what will you be remembered by, all those pieces to ask questions about. And if you didn't know, this movie was made for a slim $10 million budget, which is kind of unbelievable, because if I went into this movie and didn't have all this knowledge of it being 10 million, I would probably walk out and say, it looks like a movie that was shot for 50 to 75 million dollars, or maybe 100 million dollars if we're being nice about it. But it wasn't $10 million for this, because it was shot in some other locations that didn't require a lot of money, and it wasn't shot by a studio. As I said, this was picked up by A24, and that's the studio that picked it up. I'm not sure how much they did pay for it, maybe like 20 million or something like that. But can you just look at all the other big blockbusters coming out these days, especially from Disney, like Snow White, Captain America. Those are box office, juggernauts sometimes, but they ballooned to 250, $300 million budgets, and they look much uglier and they have less substance than The Brutalist does. I know it's basically really hard to compare these two movies, but it's just impressive, in my opinion, to have a movie look like this and feel like this for only $10 million. And it sucks that Hollywood is trying to, stray away, turn away from that. But I'm happy that we're getting more movies like that, and that's thanks to Brady Corbet, who is hopefully going to get a Best Director nomination. Of course, this movie will get a Best Picture nomination, but if it's not obvious yet, I loved it, and I was enthralled by this whole film, as it feels like nothing I've ever seen before in my whole lifetime. The one thing I can compare it to also would probably be There Will Be Blood from Paul Thomas Anderson, kind of like that immense full story with all that, everything just going on. And at its core, though, The Brutalist is a story about an architect. And, you're probably asking, what is an architect? Well, they are someone who kind of is for creation. They create things, they build things. And this film, Adrien Brody is our architect. And then in this film, he's trying to build himself up as an immigrant fleeing after the end of the Holocaust. As he tries to create, others around him are basically his destruction. As I would say, when something new comes into the world or into your vision, like I would say to myself, when something new comes into me that I'm not too familiar with, that I don't like, someone will always try to tear it down. And that's what this whole movie is kind of about. One of the biggest themes in this film is about art and how often it's not appreciated in its own time. There's a specific scene in the end here where it does kind of flash forward, and you're kind of taking in all this artwork that this man made. And this is, it's very true in our reality, especially a long time ago when art literally goes unnoticed and it just gets thrown into like a basement or something, or, a museum. No one noticed it for a long time. And as the world changes, a lot of things change in the world. That art does stay the same, but the people start looking at the artwork differently, start appreciating it more. It is so interesting how true that theme is for this movie. You look back at things in such a different way when you do, take it in, take that, journey in. It's so cool that way. And Laszlo in this movie went through, a lifetime of struggles and hell to develop his art and his, creations. But the end result in Destination is what matters the most. All in all, art prevails after every single struggle, every single failure. Art does prevail. And on a technical level, this movie is just impressive as hell. As I said, it's made for a $10 million budget, and technically, it looks much more expensive. The production design, costume, cinematography, and score are all just insanely detailed and layered to perfection. This was actually filmed in VistaVision, which I'm not too familiar with, but all I do know is that a movie hasn't been made with VistaVision for a long time. It kind of changes the film, how the film looks and goes into the camera. I think it's changed horizontally instead of vertically here. So you do get kind of like a bigger picture there, and the colors do pop out, and the colors and details of each shot just made everything kind of feel like a dream. And that's kind of funny because this whole movie is about the American dream and how false it can be. So when you're done with the film, you kind of wake up from that false dream of what's going on in this film. So that's a kind of an interesting thing to take away from it too. The score is perfect in my eyes, one of the best scores from last year. Gave me chills as it takes its time to like sit in the background, kind of sit with you for a minute. But once it crescendos, you feel it so immensely just in your soul. The cast here is spectacular. It's a great ensemble piece. Adrien Brody is going to get an Oscar nomination. Hopefully Felicity Jones, hopefully Guy Pearce. They are just an insane trilogy. Adrien Brody, I think this is definitely his best performance up there with The Pianist. I don't know which one would be better. Maybe this one. He puts in a lot of emotional effort here, especially that second half. Guy Pearce is an insane villain figure, insane force to be reckoned with here. I swear we don't see him in movies that often, which kind of sucks because he's a fantastic actor. Felicity Jones shows up in the second half, plays a very crucial part to this story. Very interesting to see how layered she was and how important her character was. And Joe Allan is also very good here, and he's also kind of a villainous character. It's kind of interesting to see him butt heads and try to, kind of force everything on its side when Adrien Brody's character Laszlo is trying to make everything correct, everything perfect. So everyone is kind of working against Adrien Brody's character here. It is a really interesting character piece for him. For the pacing, it's a movie that's 3.5 hours, and I think time flies by, especially if you don't think about it, and you also have that built-in 15-minute intermission to go stretch your legs or use the bathroom. So I think it is a very nice runtime, and it's actually a movie that could be told in those two parts. You could have two different movies there because they're very different, but I think they work together also very well. Overall, The Brutalist is unlike anything I've ever seen before, as it's epic and monumental about how complex the American dream is and how false it can end up to be. Brady Corbet should easily lock up Best Director, as should Adrien Brody with Best Actor, as it's, I think, his best performance to date. This is an enthralling picture that needs to be seen at least once in your lifetime, and hopefully it's the next Best Picture winner. I'm going to give The Brutalist a strong 10 out of 10. If you did see The Brutalist, leave your own thoughts down below in the comments. I'm very interested to have some conversations about this movie, as it does open up a lot of conversation pieces, and it's just an immense film, and you gotta let your thoughts out on this one. But if you did enjoy this review, make sure you do leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.